Welcome, everybody. This is the first installment of Vu's Diary Archives. And as I promised, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Christmas. Christmas growing up for me was an exciting time of year. My mom and dad, even though we didn't have much money, we were poor. We didn't know we were poor. We knew that we weren't getting everything that we wanted, but my mother would always say, you don't need everything. Other children in the world need stuff also. And that was good enough for us. Some of the memories of Christmas, and over the next few videos, I'm going to talk about different things. One of my earliest memories of Christmas was when we moved from Plymouth to Kingston, to Plimpton, I mean. Christmas here in Plimpton, there was nobody around us. So the houses that are here today weren't there. It was woods. And my parents didn't have money to buy a Christmas tree. And so my father would set me up on the sled and drag me through the woods. And we would find a Christmas tree to cut down. Sometimes we were lucky. We'd find a balsam fir or a tree that looked like a Christmas tree. But most of the time, we ended up with a pine tree. And he would cut it down, and we would set it on the sled, and we'd drag it back, and we'd set it up. My mother used to pop popcorn, and we would glue the popcorn onto the end of the branches. And we would put lights on the tree. And back then, the bulbs were probably a couple inches, not a couple, about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter, inch and a half long. They were really big, not like the little bulbs we have today. There was also a bulb that was called the bubble bulb, and I don't have a picture of one. I wish I had one today. And what you did was you unscrewed the regular light, and you would screw this bubble bulb into the socket that the other light was in. And once it heated up, it looked like a candlestick. It was clear. And then bubbles would start going up, and it created a pretty cool effect. We only had those a few years because they stopped selling them because they were setting people's houses on fire because they heated up too much. Another thing that I remember at Christmas time was 2 weeks before Christmas, we would travel to everybody else's house in the family. We would go to Aunt Barbara and Uncle Sheldon's house, and there would be a small gathering of family members there. Aunt Barbara was from Norway, and she would cook Norwegian kind of desserts and food. One of the things that I remember that she would make this cone, and it was like a cookie cone, but it looked like an ice cream cone. It was really good because we used to fill it with whipped cream, and then you would eat it. It was delicious. And she would cook many other food, and everybody would gather around, and everybody would bring presents to Aunt Barbara's house. Then Aunt Mary and Uncle Keith, they would have a party at their house, and we would take their presents to their house. Aunt Mary was Greek, and she would cook baklava, and she would cook other Greek pastries and foods, and always a cake. She always had a nice cake. And she also would make this pastry, and I don't know what it was called. It was kind of a savory, not sweet, and it was kind of a puff pastry. And it had a cheese inside of it, and when it was warm, it was delicious. It was yummy. We would go to Uncle Sheldon's house, Uncle Lucky's house and Aunt Sandra's house, and they would have normal stuff like, meatballs and lasagna or pasta dish. And then everybody would come to our house and they'd bring our gifts. And that was an exciting time for me because all the gifts were coming here instead of going out. My mother and father would do their best. Again, we didn't have a lot of money. My mother would make a small ham, and she would make one thing that nobody else made. And she would take these little tiny sausages and she would cook them in barbecue sauce and grape jelly. And let me tell you, that was very yummy also. We would go to my grandparents' house. We would always go to my grandmother Ferrera's house, grandma and grandpa and grandfather's house on Christmas Eve. That's where we would end up before we would come home. Grandma would always have on the counter in the kitchen, there'd be various desserts and cookies that she would have either baked or made. Sometimes it'd be toodlings. Sometimes it'd be a spaghetti dinner. It wasn't always the same. I miss those days of traveling to everybody's house. It was a lot of fun, but as time went on, I guess the tradition just kind of faded away. Nobody wanted to do parties anymore. The families were moving on. People were getting married and moving away, and unfortunately, those days are gone. But the memories still live on. Before I end this video, I just want to say that my mom and dad, they tried their hardest to make Christmas a wonderful time for us. And in the next video that I make, I'm going to tell you how they did that. My mother was a character, and the kids know that, especially when she dressed up in her elf costume. But we'll talk more about that, and I'm hoping to find some pictures that I could share with you. So until the next time, I hope you enjoyed this little VU diary / archive of Christmas that I remember. And I've got a few other Christmas stories that I'm going to tell. And so for the next few days, that's what you're going to be getting. Hopefully, I can try to do one at least every day, if not every other day. Goodbye, everybody. Dad and VU loves you. Bye-bye.